Hello and welcome to the Microlearning Institute. This short tutorial provides a very brief introduction to some concepts in the area of strategic change. Firstly, let's look at the stages in the strategic change process. So in this graphic, we see firstly that the first stage is that we need to, as an organization, determine the need for change. Once that has been done, then an assessment needs to be made to the obstacles to this change. And once those obstacles have been assessed and strategies have been determined to overcome those obstacles, then we can proceed and implement the change. And finally, we evaluate the impact of the change and assess if the goals of the change have been delivered. Now, there are a number of perspectives that we can take with respect to how we approach change. The first perspective is we can take what's called a rationalist perspective. And here, this is where we believe that planned change follows a hard systems approach, i.e. that change can be delivered using systems and processes and procedures. Here we see change as something that occurs in sequential, logical steps. Phase 1 preceding phase 2, preceding phase 3, etc. So here we recognize the need for change, we identify measures, we implement it, and we evaluate. So a very systematic, process-driven approach. Alternatively, another approach to managing change is to look at the emergent model. And here we see that change is a continuous process, that it's an ongoing process without any clear end game. We see that change is largely about the politics within the organization, the power structures within the organization, the culture and the context of the organization. So here, in delivering change in this concept, the stress is put on process and path and not on the rational style approach. Hence, we use language like mobilizing resources, we change rituals, and we look to influence the politics, the power, the culture of the organization. Next, we can take a view that organizations are complex adaptive systems. And in this case, we see that large organizations are too complex to manage change programmatically. So here we're saying that a systematic, rationalist approach is simply not feasible in large organizations. So here we look more to disturb the organization so that change may occur rather than directing what change is likely to occur. So here we look to prod the organization, to guide the organization and facilitate the organization, which again is the opposite to commanding and controlling the organization. Now, of course, there are many reasons why change will be resisted, and these include: one is parochial self-interest, often called what's in it for me, so that if each individual in the change process doesn't understand how it benefits them, then of course they may decide that we're better off where we are, so the change won't be implemented. Also, there can be many misunderstandings in the change journey, which of course will lead to a lack of trust, which of course results in a resistance to change. If I don't trust that this change is going to be in my best interest, then I will resist the change. We can make some contradictory assessments, so the organization may say it'll be better because, whereas I might think, that's not actually better, so consequently I will resist the change. Sometimes organizations look to change too much too quickly, and consequently too many change initiatives overwhelm the organization and people begin to resist the change, so this makes it more difficult to achieve any change. Also, we can have initiative decay. So initially the change initiative is fueled with resources and enthusiasm, but as the change takes some period of time, the initiative and the resources and the enthusiasm for the initiative may decay, which of course will result in a resistance to the change. Some organizations have a difficulty in sustaining the change, so they can make the change for a short period of time, but eventually things migrate back to the way they were before we introduced the change. And finally, some organizations may have a low tolerance for change, and this may occur after a lot of change has been experienced over a period of time, so that people begin to think, we've had enough change now, it's time to consolidate and rebalance ourselves in the new position. A number of change models that we're going to look at over the session. One is force field analysis, developed by Lewin. Another model that relates to change and implementing change is the cultural web, developed by Johnson and Scholes. And again, Balgoon and Hope Halley developed another model which is called the change kaleidoscope, and that gets us thinking about the types of change and the context within which change will be implemented. Here's an interesting graphic about the key elements that are required to manage complex change. And we can see at the very top here, if we want to achieve the change, we need a number of elements working together. One is a clear vision as to why the change is necessary. The second one are the skills in the organization to implement the change. The third one is the incentives and the motivations for people to change. The fourth one is the resources, adequate resources to put the change in place. And lastly, we need a very good action plan through which we can manage the change. And if we have all of those elements, then the change is possible. Whereas we can see from the remainder of the graphic, if any one of those elements are missing, then the change will not be implemented. Thank you very much for watching this short tutorial from the Microlearning Institute on Introduction to Strategic Change.